是的呢。
你问他，只有这种时候。
是的。GPT 糊弄他们学生。我说你不要那么明目张胆。
但是，I mean，就是有了大家
对呀，我说不要那么明目张胆。
来，那电脑改你的。你写了个啥？
我写了，我写在第一行，你打开看就有。
不是我看的。
不可能，不可能，
不
可能，不可能，
那就只能你自己写人。那你不可能，那你自己看，
就不能找 GPT 问一下吗？
不看。你知道为什么我看的困难在这儿吗？我没有看 video，所以看不到你的讨论讲。
没事，我也讲不通，主要是那个课，给你大致讲讲逻辑。但是你要让我一行一行给你讲。
要我一开始我就没看懂，你等一下你打。这样，因为你筛 data 时候就把它 normalize 啊，然后你就对。
我没有，我是在后面才筛的。让我们今天可以在这课上给你补大声批评。
你还要放 video，你在那大声批评。
他在上面放 video。
好的，来，
行吗？
呀，你听。
主要放电脑
放一下。
是吧？不行。
好。我吃了。上面写的。不是。We got here so early today. I'm so proud of myself. 对，这个华人的是其实是一直 so annoying. I was like，
这个 votes 跟 rating 都是用来做 weight 的。rating 是那个清单上的 votes 是那个别人认为可以
pay like so much money.
数据里的，一看就没看。
No, I know the parking garage.
Not votes, not votes.
我是说 and I think they're. Do you have a working class? You know when they're like.
No data.
Wait, you're saying what? You're taking everything down. Stuff. Oh, and I think it's a week. From now.
那个是另外一个。
Yeah, that's.
那个结构里面有 help.
I don't understand. We don't get free parking on our island. Like our coaches have to pay for parking.
No, at your field. Like, is that?
就是第一个问题。
Yeah.
别的情感长度没有，这是
I don't know what happened. How are you?
Therapist.
交给你了，你在讲懂代码，代码都写了，但是我讲不清楚。我讲不清楚，就是那个方法，知道的。TF IDF
wasn't bad at all. Like Snowway is not.
Thank God.
Really?
I just like
So
tell
bad.
people. Yeah, they're just like I live. You're like,
yeah.
and I can't even park where I.
Yeah.
Okay, it's time to start. Some people will still be drifting in. It's 2:31 now, so I want to go ahead and get the party going. Some important information for you. One, just by way of reminder, Thursday is your individual assessment. You can post that up on Canvas like you do the other work. That's a reminder. I'm going to do a final exam test review here in just a minute. But today that'll be part of today's agenda. And then we'll get into what I call the ethical you, the ethical organization, some danger signs and ethical concepts on ethical leadership, and then how to avoid the traps that can undermine your career, undermine your professional life, and so forth. And if you wanted to see that, we have a case Exhibit A this last week with Eric Swalwell of California stepping down out of Congress because he couldn't maintain his couldn't maintain a good ethical posture. Okay, so in terms of the final exam, here are the important things you need to know. Number one, it's closed book. You'll have your computer. It's gonna be on the computer. That's why we did the feedback survey early on. There are going to be 22 multiple choice questions and then 4 cases. It's going to be for 100 points, but it'll get scaled down to 35 because if you look at your syllabus, 35% of your grade is on the final exam. And then I think 40% of your grade is on your casework with your team. 5% of your grade is on what you're turning in on Thursday, and then 20% is on participation. Moral of the story, 60% of your grade is you. Okay, is you alone. The other 40% is the work you've been doing with your colleagues. Okay, so in terms of where the questions come from, most of our time was spent in chapter 1, 3, or 5, and I had certain readings from those sections. So I would revisit those readings in the syllabus, make sure that you're familiar with what the text has to say about certain things. Chapter 1, chapter 3, and chapter 5 in particular. And then a couple questions out of chapter 2 and 4, and that kind of relate, to either the chapter or something we were talking about in class. So that's the multiple choice piece. That would be, of the 100% of the exam, that would be 22%. Then the other cases, the 4 cases, the things that I would say that a case would focus on would be, I would put at the top of the list things to understand would be the ethical reasoning frameworks, whether that's deontology or utilitarianism, act or rule, or virtue ethics, those kinds of things. So I'd be familiar with that for sure. I would be familiar with the stakeholder versus shareholder focus. What are the 2 positions there? To whom does management answer, and who are they obligated in terms of whose interests are they serving, which is a broad question. The giving voice to values, it's not in your text, so that would be something off of the notes, but I think, so I would look over the notes on that, see kind of where that goes. Because that's an important thing I think your book missed out on, tell you the truth. I don't know if I don't know why. Maybe because they're from Canada, they just did. So something like that. The characteristics of the ethical and the unethical organization, we're going to talk a little bit about that again today. We've talked about it before. I'm going to revisit that topic. I'm going to talk about in stages of moral development. That's on the personal thing. That's the ethical you that we're going to talk about today. Previously, we talked about cheating, everybody cheats a little kind of thing, conflicts of interest. We saw that in many of the cases where the board was conflicted, the employees were conflicted, and so forth, and just general bias in decision making. So, and then the only other thing that I'm not sure where it might fit in exactly in terms of the how you might shape a question, but also what's the test of an ethical decision? And you've got your common sense tests. Would your mother want to see this in the newspaper kind of thing, or if this were front page in the news, would you feel comfortable with it? That kind of stuff. So those are the things I think pretty much cover the landscape of what we addressed this semester. So I will shape 4 questions to get you to use some of those tools, some of those reasoning models to address problems. Okay, and in terms of, I try to make the questions, should I say gradable? Because in a lot of ways you could say, ethics questions, there's no right or wrong answer. It could be this way, it could be that. The way that things have been graded, the way that your group was graded is, first there was a minimum with the questions answered, and then, as you know from the syllabus, beyond that, if you enriched it with other insights, that would raise the level, and if you further enrich it with your own insights and outside insights, that, that was a top level response. And so in this final exam, it would be graded in somewhat the same way. And that is to say, there are facts that there are things you should raise in your answer. There are aspects that I would look for in any answer regarding a question on ethical reasoning, for example. But ultimately, each question will be graded across the class, and from a high to low, and then we'll summarize across all the questions and kind of try to give you the fairest grade that we can humanly do on this thing. I was talking to a student before class, and I was saying, they were talking about a particular group assignment, and I said, if their group assignment was, let's say, lower than they thought it should be, I said, well, I can't show you the best answer, but I know that if you saw the best answer, you'd know it's better than yours. And if you've ever graded, some of you have been TAs, and when you look at open-ended questions, there are some people who have very rich, full answers, and some don't. This is the way it is. For whatever reason, they didn't think about it, or they didn't think it was necessary. Well, I can't say why that wasn't as rich. Maybe they didn't have as much time. I can't say, but when anybody evaluating the questions can kind of see, okay, this one is at this level, and the other ones are somewhere in the middle, or maybe at the bottom of the middle, or what have you. So anyway, that's where that's at. Those are the topics that I would cover, and I think the exam starts for those who can make it. I know there are about 5 people who can't, but it's Wednesday, 8:30 to 11:30. So you got 3 hours. There should be no time issue that I can think of. It just depends how much time you want to spend on it. And by having it closed book, I'm keeping you from spending 3 hours here. Right? So bring it. Look it all over. Make some notes to yourself, and you should be well prepared. I would think. Okay. All right. So I said this is our agenda for today: the ethical you, the ethical organization, science of ethical collapse, and ethical leadership. I also may need to go back a little bit on conflicts of interest, which I left a little bit of information on the floor last time. I need to bring a couple issues up. But in terms of the ethical you, we chatted about this to tie into last week, that the model for ethical decision making it starts with sensitivity, right? Did you even recognize that this could be a problem, right? Not everybody is attuned to that, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Some people, it just never crosses their mind that some people might be offended. Yeah, Princess?
A question about the exam.
Sure.
Like after we're done submitting, you see our score?
No. And it'd be impossible. Actually, I've got it because 80% of the grade is on your. I can have AI grade it for you if you want. That'll move things along, but I'm not going to do that. So no, it's going to take time for me to go through. Okay. The moral sensitivity is really, really key. And being in this class, I think that if nothing else, there should be some awakening to that idea that not everybody sees things the same way, and that people will read into what you're doing in maybe some negative ways. So having that sensitivity is really important. And then reasoning through what's the best way to handle a decision, and then formulating a course of action. That's the giving voice to values thing. And then the hard part is actually doing it, walking the talk, implementing the action, taking the heat. Oftentimes there are harsh penalties for taking a stand on ethical issues. Lose your job, lose a friend, lose a lot of possibilities for loss here. Okay, in the long run, you got to bet that it's the better way to go. Okay, but in the short run, definitely costs. Okay, so just in terms of connecting some more things to the text, different people are at different places about these issues, right? So the model that the ethics research world uses is this Kohlberg's stages of moral development, and we'll talk one idea of this is that you can actually kind of coach a person to a higher level. These people tend to start at a certain level, like children start at a certain level. It's called pre-conventional, and pre-conventional is basically it's just self-centered, right? Children tend to be self-centered and don't really, they may just respond to punishment or rules, and that's what motivates their behavior. They obey the rules to avoid punishment. And that's the stage one. So, well, I'll give you a better example of stage one here. You've ever watched Seinfeld? Let me give you a little backstory on this one. See if I can find it here. Okay, the backstory. This is the stage one, stage two of Kohlberg. The backstory is the character in the that's being reprimanded by his boss has been involved in a sexual affair with another worker, and the boss is trying to explain to him why this is a problem. So check it out. This is pre-conventional. Okay. Was that wrong? That's the pre-conventional thinking. You know, were there rules on that? I think everybody does that. I don't know. You probably have friends. If you think about your life up to now, you know some people kind of operate that way. It's very the rules are there. They behave within the rules, and if they can game the system, they can. That's stage two. They know the rules, but they're smart enough to figure out, okay, how can I get around these and not get caught? But most people aren't there happily, at least not people our age, beyond age 18. They're more in what they call the conventional level two of the Kohlberg's model, and that's where they're making decisions with the thought of the people around them. And the only difference between stage three and stage four is how broad is that circle of acquaintances and relations that they're concerned about. At one level, they're just concerned about their immediate world, their immediate social sphere, their friends, the community, neighbors, and so forth. But stage four, they're taking a broader scope. Maybe focused on what's the right thing to do in a civil society, as opposed to, well, in my community or my university, what's the larger issue at stake in this decision. So that's most people kind of line up in there. If you go beyond that, what they call post-conventional, you're really talking higher order thinking about the whole problem. That rules are made, but rules, who says the rules should be one way or the other? Maybe there's different ways to look at this. I think Mark Twain caught the idea. I'm a fan of Mark Twain. If you've ever read Huck Finn or Tom Sawyer or whatever, but he's very clever. And he put it this way: whenever you find yourself on the side of the majority, it's probably time to pause and reflect. So it's kind of like, don't necessarily go with the crowd on an issue, but you start thinking thinking the thing through more thoroughly. Okay, and then the final stage six is where Kohlberg said people never go, but this is more you're talking kind of mythic creatures, mythical religious people, whether it's Muhammad or a Jesus or a Confucius or whatever. You start thinking people who are almost above the way we think about things, and most of what they're trying to put out. So that's the Kohlberg model. The key point there is that individuals' moral development can actually be maybe coached to a better place, which is why there are classes like this. Maybe if you think about it a little bit, you'll kind of move away from I just obey the rules versus more a richer way of thinking about these kind of things. I might want to contrast this with what they call System 1 and System 2. And I'm telling you this in case you are in a CPA ethics test somewhere. They might bring up this notion of System 1 versus System 2 thinking. And that's basically, it's very simple. It basically says System 1 thinking is your intuition about how to handle things. System 2 is, okay, I've thought about it now. So System 1, and most of us kind of work on System 1, right? It's like most of our day is that way. What's my intuition? What's going on? Somebody says something unkind to me. How do I respond to it? Do I intuitively snap back, or do I give it some thought, right, before I respond? Stuff like that, okay? So now that's the ethical you, just kind of characterizations. Where do you lie? That's something that you would have to think about. Where do your friends lie? Where do your acquaintances lie? When you think about the organizations, many of you are going to be going out to work. If some of you have worked in corporate, you're going to be going back out there. In terms of the culture, ethical culture that you would want to be part of, you might want to think about that. You know what, we've talked a little bit about organizational culture. We've seen it in the case examples. Sometimes it's horribly off track. Other times, we haven't really seen many. I guess we wouldn't have a case study of the organization that does things really, really well, but we should. But when you look at an organization, you think about top management. You know, what's the direction that they take? The tone at the top is very important. Problem with tone at the top is you can't see that easily, right? Because I mean, it's kind of like John Stump, CEO of the year, okay, or Bernie Ebbers, you know, hero of the telecom world, or Richard Scrushy. Well, he seems to be scummy from the get-go, but a lot of times these people at the top, they don't necessarily, they're not easy to pin down on these kind of issues, and they have they project a different kind of image than what they really are. But you can start with their value statements, their beliefs, their customs. What do they do? And you can see it at the lower levels of the organization. A code of ethics might be something that means something to you. Even Wells Fargo said their code of ethics doesn't mean anything. It's what they do that matters. And that's certainly true. So usually in your interviews, or it won't take very long, review Glassdoor, you can get a pretty good sense of where the organization is at with regard to what their expectations are about ethical behavior. It won't take long. A few conversations around the coffee pot will pretty much tell you where they're at. Here we go. I need Hao Qing. Oh, Hao Qing's here. Good. I need come back to Hao Qing because he's our resident expert on guessing what's going on here. All right, Hao Qing, I need another one of your excellent guesses. Is this an organization? We have their ethical description of their ethical culture. And by now you probably know that I'm trying to trick you. Okay, so a top organization, you'd want to be, I mean, maybe this isn't enough, but they say their values define who they are. Integrity, respect, inclusive, energetic people, enthusiastic, courage to lead, build relationships based on doing the right thing. Sounds like a good organization, right? Okay, an ethical culture that you could appreciate. Yes? Yeah. So do they walk the talk? Maybe not so much, right? Because this is EY before they got caught with $100 million fine for cheating on ethics tests. So yeah, it's what's one thing to say things, it's another to live them, right? That's another to live them. All right. So in terms of the tone at the top, what do you look for? From leaders are very, very important in terms of setting the tone. And it's not something as an auditor you can easily see, because nobody's going to tell you what's going on at the organization. They're going to be tight-lipped about that. But if you're in the organization itself, you're going to see the example. It's going to be an example of integrity, of prudent, cautious, careful, thoughtful. The leaders are going to be, by their lifestyle and the way they make decisions, are going to set the tone for everybody else. So the tone at the top is a real thing. It's ethereal. Okay, it's not easy. You can't pin it down. It's not written anywhere that makes any difference. But I assure you that when you're in the organization, you'll know. You will know. It's going to be. It doesn't mean people can't make mistakes. That even leaders can't make mistakes. But as a general rule, that's what you look for. And if you think about what you're looking for in these organizations, I would put at the top of the list myself, humility. That is, how are the people? Is there an arrogance about what they do? Are they the smartest people in the room? Okay, like Enron, they were the smartest people, the smartest guys in the room, right? Is there any sense of humility about what they do? That's a really, really interesting trait of leadership and management. I don't know. I can just give you my 50 years of business experience, and the most impressive leaders are those that are very low key, very, very humble about what they do, even if they're big shots. Okay. In fact, even more so if they're big shots, because they set the tone. And it really makes a huge difference. Anybody reflect that? Do they think about business leaders that you know, and the ones that really impressed you, or that really kind of you thought, man, I like that example. That really makes a difference to me. Claude, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, very much so. Like there's one guy back home, the country senior partner, PwC Zambia. He's now kind of like a local LinkedIn celebrity. Who he is, well, according to just us, his persona outside and outside the office, as well as like online. Just he's a man of integrity. He's kind of quiet, very low key. He knows everyone's name. Like,
yeah.
He knows every single person. Like if he comes to you and you don't know and he doesn't know your name, he has to give you like $100 or something. He's very, very humble. And honestly, working at a big four can be extremely stressful. But because he's the one who's kind of setting the tone, his attitude is flowing downwards, and I guess almost everyone is mimicking him.
I was working when I was in the auto industry. The SVP that I was working for, I had my wife and I had our 5th child, and I was flying back and forth from Detroit, and I flew home, and I got home, and he had sent this giant thing to my wife, this giant for the baby, and it's kind of like it didn't have to do that. It had to cost a fortune to send it, but just to remember that he knew, he paid attention, knows when or whether it's your birthday, or whether that you have kids at all, or that who your wife is, or what's going on with your life. They go beyond just the regular thing. They know your name. They know what's going on with you.
Give you that number. You like phone number.
Yeah. Even to that. Hey, you got a problem? Call me. Or whatever it is. I have in my family, we have he's passed away now, one genius, a true genius. Got his PhD in nuclear physics in a year, started a company with about 8,000 people. He died young, but if you talk to him, you never knew it, ever. You never knew it. And he would find out everything about you, and you'd find out nothing about him. But he was like talking to just, I don't know, pick a janitor down the hallway. Didn't matter. And so I've always taken that to be a really interesting aspect. So inside these ethical organizations, openness, transparency, you can voice your opinion, your thoughts without fear of retribution. We know now that's a pretty important thing, because in organizations where there's problems, they can't really say much. There's an aura of intimidation and fear. Zero tolerance for destructive behavior, and I think that's important. I think especially for women, there should be, in terms of a safe environment. I think it's very, very important. No intimidation. I think that's a given. Integrity, meaning basically if they they're going to do the right thing, even if it costs them something. They're not going to be twisting with the wind, whichever way it blows. And I like to put it over deliver. They under promise and over deliver as a way of life. Okay, they're not going to tell you they can do more than they can do. Okay, they're fair. They're fair in terms of rewards, and they're fair in terms of workload distribution, whatever it is. And their social responsibility, you might. This is something we didn't talk about this on the social responsibility side, but this is a good example of merging shareholder with stakeholder interests. And Airbnb, I don't know if you guys saw this about a year ago now. Airbnb was donating lots of money to local governments. And so why would Airbnb donate money to local causes in all kinds of cities all around the U.S., local causes, local, whatever needed money in that particular city, if it was a shelter, a homeless shelter, or this or that or other thing, or anything that was in need in that particular community, they would donate thousands of dollars to it all around the country. Okay, so is that just wasting shareholder money, Connor?
No, I mean, I think it is, but I think it's more so that they can get like zoning laws or stuff for their houses, just kind of smart. I guess from that standpoint, I do agree with it, but
that's exactly what they were trying to do. They wanted to be on the local politicians and leaders' radar that, hey, we want people to be able to rent their houses out through Airbnb in your community, and you can pass laws that stop it. But we don't want you to do that. So they're basically, you can look at that in a negative way or as a kind of corruption, or you can say, well, no, that's just kind of enlightened conscious capitalism as we were talking about. Okay. Now for you, if those of you who are profession, or even if not, as long as you're in the accounting function, you have to recognize that you have lots of different groups you got to answer to. You have to answer to the profession and the AICPA code. You have to answer to the firm and their policies. You have to answer the client and their expectations. And so when you look at all that together, it can be a little bit daunting. But it's a balancing act. So all those have to be front and center when you make decisions in the world of public accounting. There are multiple audiences. So some people just have to answer to one. We have to answer to a variety of audiences, which I think is a good thing, because when we think about it from different perspectives, it should make our decisions better. Okay. All right. So I want to go through. This is mentioned in your text, but it's brushed over very lightly. And I want to go a little bit deeper on this, things that you need to watch out for, okay? And a lot of these, it's almost like a recap of the cases that we did. Okay, now this is actually from Marian Jennings' book. She has a book, 7 Signs of Ethical Collapse. I think it's mentioned in your text. But I want to hit over those 7 signs kind of quickly here. One is pressure. You saw it in almost every case that we looked at, and that is a pressure to meet numbers, pressure to meet financial targets can cause a lot of problems in the organization. You saw that with HealthSouth, poor Aaron Beam, numbers were a big issue there. Wells Fargo, 8 is great. They had to meet those numbers. Wall Street numbers were great. You saw it with WorldCom. They were trying to meet their numbers targets. So all of that, so if you're in an environment where that situation goes on, whether as an auditor or as an individual working in the corporate world, this is a signal things may be going the wrong way. Okay. If you remember the David Myers, the poor guy, he said, we started with the one fix, and I didn't realize before things were done, I was way down the slope, and how could I recover from it? You make the first mistake is the big mistake. Thereafter, it's just downhill. So we saw that, right? We saw that. We saw Richard Scrushy go figure it out. Those numbers can't be right. And that was strategic on his part to get those people to do the wrong thing and not him, right? So don't be a sucker about these things. When people ask you to do things that you know they wouldn't do, why should you do it? I had one of my friends higher up in the automotive industry put it this way, I don't want to go to jail for things that I do, much less for what you do, or you want. So think about it. If you want to think about it that way, it may get you out of trouble at some point. And don't think, and I think this class, I certainly have the attitude, but I hope that you've seen in here that no one is immune from this, right? No one's immune. If you put yourself in the shoes of a David Myers or a Betty Vinson or any situation, all of a sudden, if you've got your own money problems, you've got a mortgage and a car payment and kids going to private school and medical costs, and you'd like to go on a vacation and all this it's huge pressure on people when they all of a sudden if they make a certain decision, they may lose that job. So don't think you're above it. That's the beginning of the end. Okay? Pride comes before fall. All right. Fear and silence was the second big thing. And we saw that again with Aaron Beam. He wasn't going to raise his voice against Scrushy. If he did, he just got slapped down. So there wasn't any debating going on there. The flatlining and the termination, that was in almost every case that we looked at. Someone tried to raise a voice and they got fired. That was in the Health South case. In every case, if you do a little digging, you'll find out there was somebody that trying to warn them, but it didn't go anywhere. Okay, and those people didn't. Their career was over. Okay, or they went along quietly, trying to say, I'm just going to go along, and they're going to take the blame, right? So that fear and silence is something you can feel inside of a business environment. There are things you can do to solve that. The organization could do to solve that. Obviously, having an open communications, a system that would reward communicators and whistleblowers and follow up and let them know how the follow up goes. At WashU, if I do a whistleblow, I say there's something wrong here, whatever it might be. They will digest that. They will act on it. They will communicate with me what's happened since I've made that complaint. Okay, and there'll be an investigation. So I'll know what's going on. It's not like everything. I made a complaint. I have no idea what's happened to it. Okay, and certainly no retribution, which would be someone comes and gives me a very poor performance evaluation. In fact, just in the city of St. Louis, yesterday on the radio, I was listening in St. Charles. There was someone who got a $5 million judgment against the police department over there because he would not give a lower performance ranking to an employee that his boss said give that person a lower performance rating, because that person they wanted the lower performance rating for had made a complaint. And so the way they were going to deal with complainers is they were going to give them poor performance evaluations. And so this person in St. Charles County just said, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. And I don't know what happened that caused him to get a $5 million judgment for his benefit, but that's a good example of the way things can go. You saw also this situation of how these in really off the rails ethical situations where the companies would have a younger, more malleable executive crew. They wanted young people there, or they wanted friends there, or they wanted family there. They need control. They need control to manipulate and do the wrong things ethically. So the younger people in particular, Fastow, I think, was 33, something like that, and making $26 million. They want people that aren't economically secure because they can kind of capture them that way. They can't lose the job. They can't afford to lose the job, and in that way they they get people to bend to their will in terms of these ethical collapses. There's really good, easy ways to stop that. Okay, the board involvement in all office hires. The board needs to be involved in the officer hire, and if they see, hey, isn't that 29-year-old CFO? That makes us a little nervous. I don't see a lot of experience there. I don't, the board should be the ones that put the stop to that, right? But where it happened in the examples that we looked at this semester, the board was part of the problem, not part of the solution. So board should be involved in hiring the executive officers for sure, and monitoring their performance, and training them to a certain degree if needs be for what the expectations are. Now, there's an interesting question here. This is kind of goes to your auditing class and fraud. Do we monitor the personal lives of these people? You know what I mean by that? If Hao Yun is our new CFO and she's 33 years old and she's driving a Maserati to work now, it's kind of like, well, we're paying her, 150,000. I don't know how she's affording a Maserati, and she's got a 6,000 square foot home. Something's not right here, So monitoring personal life is a difficult thing in the sense that when you look at some certain fraud cases in terms of that sort of situation, a lot of times the fraudsters use their money. Why not? I mean, they stole it. It's theirs now. But I can think of a lot of fraud cases where that took place, and people knew it was going on, but they didn't want to ask, and if they did ask, there would be a certain excuse. Should they check into that excuse? Oh, I just got a big inheritance from my parents. Okay. Do we stop there as auditors? Certainly as internal auditors, do we need to do some other kind of checking here? Okay, things like that. It gets sticky. Hubris, arrogance. If you look at throughout the book, on all the cases, you're going to see a certain flamboyance, a certain sense of entitlement. The Regas family in Adelphia, they treated the company like a personal piggy bank, buying homes all around the world and flying jets everywhere. They owned 51% of the stock, therefore all the money was theirs. That's the way they viewed. You saw Ebers getting loans for his many, many purchases of land and timber and whatever it was he thought he needed. Scrushy, he wanted to be a billionaire. And these people have that sense of entitlement at the leadership level. They're manipulative, they're bullying, they want what they want. And a lot of times because they're the leader, they think that everything should feed into them. Okay. I've seen this with even small business people. It's like they came up with the idea, so all the spoils of all the rewards of the idea should go to them. And that's a trap. It's a dangerous thing. And if you see people like that, you want to stay clear. You want to stay clear. Oftentimes, if you look at the leadership, the life of the leadership, there's other things to think about. One is they're going to live large because they feel entitled, and they're going to also try to deceive you by being very philanthropic. They're going to give to the charities. They want to be the big person in the community. They want to be someone that's looked up to as supporting all the community. That's a strategic maneuver to deceive. And I don't know if you could ever find a situation where that wasn't true with a big fraud, where there's a big fraud where someone has all the money, that they're going to try to buy the friendship of the community. I know in my own community, there's a certain business leader that there's a lot of talk that the money's coming because of drug enterprises. But all of the local needs are met by this person. Which I look at like some people look at that as that, and that buys community support. People don't want to know. They don't want to know how that, it's like, hey, this community is getting supported. I don't want to ask any more questions. They'll go there, but it's a warning sign. It's a warning. All right. The weak board, we saw that in every case. The board was asleep at the switch for a variety of reasons. Certainly conflicts of interest were a big issue. Sometimes maybe they had children that were working for the company. They would get excessively remunerated for the services they were provided. Board membership is fun, except for the lawsuit stuff. It's certain amount of, depending on how well you do your job, some of them don't do much. The Enron board had a bunch of famous people, and they were just there. They were window dressing. They were window dressing. Same thing with the Theranos. Theranos had a bunch of big name politicians and big name business leaders. They didn't do much of anything really. And so a weak board is a big danger sign. In fact, as an auditor, if you see a weak board, that is reason for qualifying an audit opinion. If they are not active, they don't know what's going on, you have 100% justification to say, I'm not signing off on these. I'm not giving a clean opinion on these financials. Period. Now, very few do that because the board will say, "Oh, we did this, we did that." But we had meetings, and they'll come up with stuff. But okay, board ownership of stock. We saw that in a couple of the cases. Certainly, the Wells Fargo case we just did last week. That's problematic. That's problematic because we saw the same problem with Ebers. They made a loan. Now all of a sudden, they loaned them the money to keep the stock price from collapsing. So boards with large ownership of stock become problematic. So weak board, how do you solve that? Well, the SEC has been doing a lot to try to address this problem. Sarbanes-Oxley was very helpful in this regard. And the exchanges themselves, now the majority of board members need to be independent of the company. That's important. All audit members must be independent, and at least in the New York Stock Exchange, all of the nominating committee needs to be independent. So if you want to get an executive, you want to hire an executive, the nominating committee, or hire a CEO, the nominating committee is all independent. That's kind of interesting. Boards should strengthen their policies with regard to what's company property and what's not. Whatever policies they have about self-dealing, that is, board members whose companies also serve the company they're a board member of, there needs to be clear policies on that, and there needs to be basically no waivers from the policy. That's the thing Enron was doing. It was waiving policy so Fastow could be the owner of special purpose entity and do business with Enron and all that kind of stuff. So waivers need to be few and highly scrutinized. And so there are, a lot of, I would say, and of all the problems we've saw with the cases, this is a situation that there's probably been the most improvement of in the last 15 years. It's really and a lot of investment. A lot of the big investor dollars won't invest in companies where they don't see an independent, active, invested board these days. Okay, a couple of other items. Some companies, because they're innovative, you think particularly now of the technology firms, they might think the rules don't apply to them, that they're very innovative, and that you're living in the past, they're in the future. Therefore, they should be able to do whatever they want. Occasionally, there's examples like that. We didn't run across one of those in particular, I don't think, this time. Theranos would probably be the best example where they came up with the blood test that was unlike everything else supposedly, but didn't have one of those in the other cases. And then this is what I was talking about before: the goodness atones for evil. In these companies that go off the ethical rails, you'll see that they go to great lengths to um, give the impression that they are ethically upright. They support the community. They in particular, um, they'll do public service. They'll do philanthropy. They'll fund different kinds of initiatives, all that kind of good stuff. But here's kind of a breakdown on that. Here's why they're doing it. Here's why they're doing it. If they're off the ethical rails, the charitable acts create a smokescreen, so people will think, well, no, this isn't an unethical organization. They'll make it so that regulators or auditors will think, well, this is a good company. Everybody loves them. They can't be doing what I think they might be doing. All right, so kind of create a little bit of a buffer there. And then if you are caught red-handed, people will still say, like Richard Scrushy, the jury will still say, yeah, well, he supported my community. I can't believe he did that. Those other 5 CFOs are liars. Richard's telling the truth. All right, and he bought that. He bought that with charity. So, but it worked for him. Now it didn't later on, he had other problems, but as far as the main thing we were reading about, he got away with it because of this. So it did get him over the hump. All right. All right. Let's talk about ethical leadership here, and then I want to go back to conflicts of interest. This is a topic that I think you best are going to learn from by example, right? Because I mean, you can't write a book on it. I mean, I get you can, but the book is always going to be, let me tell you about this person. Let me tell you about that person, how they handle these situations. And that's the way we get, that's the way we communicate concepts of ethical leadership. Because if just to talk about it, say, well, be an honest person, be a courageous person, be a virtuous person. Say, okay. But it doesn't get you. It's like me telling you how to ride a bike. It's like, well, it's okay. I understand mechanically what's supposed to be going on, but I don't know what it feels like or what it means. And so ethical leadership is a lot by example. So I put together a lot of examples from leaders that I think, okay, that's a thought you should grab and hold on to. Okay, so I'll start with attitude. I'll go into relationships, control, listening, courage, flexibility, risk taking, failure, and so forth. So here's some thoughts for you. In terms of work and attitude, always do more than what's required. Think ahead for your boss, right? It's just kind of it's not necessarily an ethical thing, but it means a lot that you're investing yourself in the business and you're trying to think one move ahead. If you want to succeed in business like crazy, do this. Okay. Prepare when the boss says do this, you do it, and then you say, I think the next step might be this. I went ahead and did something else. You want to see your boss fall over with happiness and joy. Say, okay, they thought about the next thing. They're thinking, and that's an amazing thing. One of my former students, which I have him come in and speak to the managerial accounting class. He was also an employee of mine for a while, and he had that trait. I could see it. I wouldn't call him the smartest guy in the world, but he was super intent on doing what needed to be done and thinking about the next thing. And now he's up in the top 5 people in Caterpillar, and the youngest person in that group. And so I got to see it with my own eyes. Okay, this is a good thing. This is a really good thing. Under promise, over deliver. Be a finisher. Okay, when I say a finisher, in my profession, what separates faculty members are people who, if they're working on a research project, they finish it. Whatever it takes, they finish it. And I see that in the real world too. That you starting and leaving a job half done, or 3/4 of the way done, or 90% done. You're not done. Finish. Finishing is everything. Okay. So you make sure that one way or the other that it's wrapped up. Okay. And have a positive attitude. People love it. I got an example here from one of the most decorated Marines of all time, a guy named Chesty Puller, second most decorated Marine of all time. And here was his attitude in a battle in the Chosin Reservoir in Korea. He was quoted as this, and this is true. They were surrounded. He said, "All right, they're on our left, they're on our right, they're in front of us, they're behind us. They can't get away this time." Okay, so the troops were actually surrounded, and this was his attitude. And he famously, I think he has 5 Navy Crosses, 1 Distinguished Service Cross, but his attitude is infectious. We can get her done. It doesn't matter what the challenges are. That's fine. So much the better. Don't be the other attitude is, I'm a big fan of Scott Adams. He passed away recently. I don't know if you know who Scott Adams is, but he had a thing called Dilbert. And so there was Sourpuss, and I really could connect with Sourpuss. He complains about everything. He says, whatever you're doing there, it's a waste of time. If you beat your head against the wall, it doesn't make it a drum. But I like the last one the best. People say the glass is half full, but they don't tell you what it's half full of. Okay. So don't be Sourpuss. Everybody has a Sourpuss in their world. So that's an attitudinal thing. It'll make a big difference in your life. Work relationships, we already mentioned this. Humility, be the janitor's best friend. Remember the birthday of the administrative assistant. Credit success to the team. Admit when you don't know something, ask for help. I put it this way, and I don't know if in WashU, all of your life, if you're at WashU, you're a special student. You wouldn't be here if you weren't special in some way. I mean, that's just the way it is. I've worked with a lot of special people in my career, from Harvard, Stanford. That's all great, but you're special, but then again, you're not. I can tell you, the guy I just told you about, who's a senior vice president at Caterpillar at age 35, whatever it is, or one of my former students, from Eastern Illinois University, raised on a farm. His dad was in prison when he was most of his life. He's going to leapfrog all kinds of Ivy League people to be the top of Caterpillar. He's already leapfrogged them. It's nice to have this special education. It's nice to be a special student, but in the real world, they're going to reward you on all these other aspects. Are you a team player? Are you thinking ahead? Are you contributing? Are you humble? All these kinds of things that make the engine of that business go. That's what matters. There's lots of smart people in the world. I've seen a lot of smart people who are, in my opinion, do nothings. They're useless in business. Okay. Leadership and control, Ronald Reagan's the best on this. No limit to the amount of good you can do if you don't care who gets the credit. That was actually on his desk, in the Resolute desk in the White House. If you don't worry about who gets the credit, you can do amazing things. Lao Tzu says, the leader is best when people doesn't even know he exists. Everybody thinks they got the job done, and leader is an invisible presence. Okay, some things to think about, right? Patton put it a little bit of a different way. Just tell people what to do and let them surprise you how they get it done. Some people like to control every detail. And you might want to think about that, right? Because there are a lot of us, especially accountants, we like control. Sometimes you have to let it go. You have to let it go. It's hard to do. And it's really I can say in many ways I have not succeeded there. I wish I were better at it. Because I've had many different people work for me, and I want to give them something. I'm thinking, oh my God, it'd be easier if I did it myself. But I really need to let them learn how to do it. Okay, leadership by example. That's a big deal here. You're going to watch people, for example. You're going to be a leadership example. That has the largest impact. Research shows that examples are the biggest influence on organizational culture. No question about that. This is something that here's a golden thing for you. When people talk, listen completely. And again, I put myself in boy, I wish I were better at this. If you ever meet a person who really listens to you, it will scare you. It'll scare you. I was working with a senior vice president of a large company, and I was bringing a project into him, and I said, here's what we need to do, blah, 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 blah. And all of a sudden he started asking very detailed questions, nicely, friendly, question after question after question. I realized he was listening to me completely. And then I realized, hell, I'm not ready for this discussion. Because when someone pays complete attention, you realize and sort of points out without pointing out the weaknesses of what you're saying. It's a epiphany. You'll say, I don't want that ever to happen again. If you listen completely to people and tune out yourself, people will appreciate it and they'll look at you as a different kind of leader. They will look at you as a different kind of leader, that they don't bring in bullshit to you because they know you're listening. You're listening and you're thinking about it. And it will change the way people treat you. All of these decisions, ethical issues, require a certain amount of courage, to do what's morally right. Do be aware, though, and this comes more from me. This is the Richard Palmer quote on the bottom. You're not going to make everyone happy no matter what you do. Don't even think about that. That's not you can't do that as a leader. You're always going to leave someone disappointed. Someone's always going to be talking behind your back if you're in a leadership role. It's okay. It's okay. When you weren't the leader, you were talking behind their back. So what's the big deal? Life goes on. Okay. You're going to make some hard calls. You got to make them. Just be able to justify them in a way that's fair to all as best you can. Risk taking. You can think about this. At some point in time, many of you are going to have an opportunity to do your own thing. I hope you do. I started my own thing when I was 38. Sam Walton started Walmart when he was 40. You don't know, once you have enough seasoning and experience in business, you're going to find that opportunity to go out there maybe on your own. Maybe you'll take it, maybe you won't. Think about it. You might want to, you don't want to regret it at the end. So can you stay within the world you're in, or do you want to take the chance? But if you do take the chance, business is always a risk. Even if you're working in the corporate world, you're working at PwC, 300,000 employees, they'll never know whether you do a great job or a terrible job. You'll be there for life if you want. But actually not so, right? No one's safe in this world. No one's safe in this world. When I was younger, my parents, they worked at the same company 30 years. Their whole life was one company. My grandfather worked at the railroad all his life, one company. That doesn't exist anymore. And there is no loyalty from the corporate world to you. None. None, none, none. In my experience, now this is after my father's generation, I see people certainly in the banking world where I worked with a lot, if they worked 5 years at one bank, that was pretty amazing. They rotate all the time. So you're going to take risk to accomplish what you want to accomplish. And it may be that you need to do your own thing. And maybe you need to move from here to go to there. But risks are what we do. You're never safe. Don't think you're safe anywhere. You're not. There is no safety. Okay. Failure, you're going to fail. You're going to fail. We all fail. Sometimes it seems our failures are much larger than our successes. But taking failure, learning how to take failure is a big deal in ethical leadership. It doesn't wither you. You don't sink into a hole. You don't quit. You keep going, right? So like Edison said, I haven't failed 10,000 times. I have learned 10,000 different ways things don't work. Okay, that's an attitude of failure that will benefit you a lot in your role in life and leadership, whether it's family life or business life. Churchill, same thing. Success is, don't let failure define you. Right? Some people they take a hit and they never quite recover, especially if they have their own business. The business goes bankrupt. Sometimes that's hard to recover from. And but recover you should, right? Recover you should. It's in this country, I don't know what it's like in other countries on this front, but in the U.S. we have this beautiful culture that says if you tried and failed, good. Nobody holds that against you. They're like, yeah, you tried. We appreciate it. That means something to us, at least in this country. It's better than not trying at all, right? So keep that in mind. But regardless of whether you tried, you failed, you didn't, you have to be flexible these days. Resilience is the word of the day, right? You hear that word a lot. Are you resilient? Can you take it if I change things for you? I wanted you to do this. Now, swoop, I need you to do something different. So be flexible. Don't overinvest in a plan. At least I'm not sure where I got that quote, but it's a good one. I don't much believe in plans at all. That's just my personal opinion. I mean, uh, if I told you what I had planned when in college, it'd be so utterly ridiculous that you'd say, "Are you kidding me? That you actually planned that at some point in time?" So plans, they're okay for maybe very short term, but be prepared to improvise, to adapt, to overcome. Like the great philosopher Mike Tyson said, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And so keep that in mind. Your plans are just plans. They're not reality. Be the person who asks why, the person who thinks a little bit more thoughtfully about the problems your business is facing, or why people are behaving the way they behave in interrelationships and situations and ethical dilemmas. Why is this happening? Okay, what is going on here? So, and if you want to go further on in terms of the why of the business, can you think around what they call famous business leaders are known to see around the corner. They seem to know what's coming before others, right? I don't think you can buy that. I don't think you can reason your way to that. That might be an innate gift. So I don't know about that one. But you can certainly be the person who says, why is it this way? Why can't we do it that way? Or why is this person having a difficulty? Or why am I having a problem with that person? Okay, that's important to be curious about what's going on around you. In terms of leadership, Alexander the Great. Y'all familiar with Alexander the Great? Okay. Basically ruled the world at age 30, died at age 32. But his position on battles was that he was more concerned about an army of sheep led by a lion than he was concerned about an army of lions led by sheep. So there's something about boldness and leadership that you can think about. How can I be a leader? Be out front. Take the slings and arrows. You ever see the thing on the man in the arena? You know what? You can Google it. The man in the arena. Is it a story or is it a poem? Yeah, it's a long form poem. It's really interesting to read. But basically, it's like the person who's out there taking the heat. They should be respected because the others are just sitting quietly, not taking the heat. So if you're going to be a leader, if you want to be a leader, you're going to take the heat. You're going to take the slings, the arrows. As I said before, not everyone's going to like it. Even the majority may not like what you're doing, but that's the territory. So, and the last thing, before I get to a couple jokes and one finishing up point, you have to think in terms of your career. Have you thought about what you're really trying to accomplish, right? Not to make a big plan about it, but what are you looking for? Is it a lot of times in the early part of your career, it's recognition. I want to be that thing. I want that position. I want to make a certain amount of money, or I want to be well known in my field. Fame in my field. I want to, like in academics, you want to write that paper that everybody's going to quote. You want to give a lecture at Harvard on your latest findings. You want to get known, and that's okay. That's okay. At a certain time, it's like, well, where does then life goes on. You have family, you have community, you have other things in your life. So and certainly as you get older, but I want you to think about it at a younger age. Maybe more about when you're dying, you're going to say that was a good ride. That was a good ride, and I feel I did what not everything is going to go the way you want. You're going to have the failures, all that kind of stuff. But at the end, you want to say it's a good ride, right? So you might want to think about, I'll be 70 this year. So yeah, I don't know. I look 80, but I actually, and at this age, you start thinking, okay, by a certain statistics, I've got so many years left, right? So I start thinking, what am I gonna do with this time that I've got left? Because it's, I've lived a whole chunk of life, and I'm still enjoying it. I'm still having a ball. But now I hear the clock ticking. So maybe you might hear the clock ticking a little sooner if you put your mind to it, because you're going to be there if you're fortunate enough to live that long, right? Because you don't know, you're not guaranteed tomorrow. So think about in terms of all this stuff, how you want to be thought of in your business, how you want to be thought of in terms of your community, how you want to be thought of in your family, and what you want to leave behind. And that's really all part of that virtuous life that the Greeks are so big on, right? And so contemplate that, right? Now the traps, you have more traps today in your world, I think, than ever before. And those traps are very real. Things that are going to stop you. They're slow you down, right? One of them's in your hand right now, right? The world's through the phone, through that thing. It's a great tool for you. It's also it can slow you down. So I say, watch out for that. Don't spend so much time on the entertainment of the world, whatever that entertainment is, right? It's going to slow you down. Grab hold of that. I mean, right now it's a really big deal, and certainly you can see it with younger people having a real difficult time. Their attention span is this long, and because their focus is on the entertainment presented on the internet and social media and so forth. The other thing is the power of no. I mentioned this to you before, but you may need to say no, and that takes some ethical courage. Say, people are going to always want you to do things. They know you do it well. They know you think ahead. At some point in time, your schedule is going to be booked like crazy. Once they know that's the kind of worker you are, everybody will want a piece of you. Okay? You're a smart, gifted person. If you add that with hardworking, if you add to that, they get the job finished. If you add to that, they get along with people and they motivate and get the team going. Now everybody wants a piece of you. And your biggest challenge will be, I got to say no. Okay, you tell them what you can do, what you can't do, and people will respect you for it. They won't get turned off. They'll say, that's a guy or gal who knows they're in need and that people need them, and knows that they can only do so much. They have a good self-awareness and they don't want to disappoint others. I know there was a certain part in my life, and that my son's going through it now because he has 5 companies. But I went through this period of life where every day I would wake up and say, who am I going to disappoint today? And that's a bad thought when you wake up. But you're going to get so busy. If you do half of what I'm talking about here, you're going to be so busy, you're going to have to think about that. You're going to have to think of, how do I avoid waking up and saying, who am I going to disappoint today? Because there's only one of me, and I can't drink the ocean. I can't, and so, but how about some fun thoughts? Ronald Reagan famously said, it's true, hard work never killed anybody, but I figure, what the heck, why take the chance? You got to love the Gipper on that one. Or my personal on leadership. Here's another really important leadership from Casey Stengel, former coach of the New York Yankees. So the key to being a good manager is keeping the people who hate me away from those who are still undecided. Good advice for your ethical leadership. Okay, so think about those things. I think that's enough for now. There's a few things you might want to go back over on the ethics, the ethics risk management and the risk management. Make sure you read those things in your text. There's a little section on ethics risk management. And otherwise than that, we're good. On Thursday, we're going to start with the cases. I'm not sure how far we go. I'm going to start out, spend most of my time on the gravity payments and then Lululemon. They're short cases. So just glance over those if you would for Thursday. We'll wrap up the cases, and that'll be that. So, okay? Y'all have a good day.
No. No. Yeah.
没有小说，也没有脚胶。
That's funny. I should look at that.